Item number 5 on our agenda, and County Council has a report to give on this item as well.
It has just come to our attention that the noticing for this item was faulty. It noticed Auburn versus Tahoe. As a result, the only action that the board can take today is to continue this matter to a date and time certain. My understanding from the clerk of the board is the time and date available is November the 8th at 2 p.m. There will be no public testimony taken because the notice was faulty.
Okay, so again, our apologies to anyone who came for that item, and we will hear it November 8th at 2 p.m. Zoom options are available for all our meetings too. So do I have a motion to continue this to November 8th at 2 p.m.?
So moved. Second.
I'll move, he seconds.
Okay, Gore and Wygant, thank you very much. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, again, our apologies on that. And it will be in Auburn at the Board of Supervisors board meeting room. Then we'll move now back to item 7C on our agenda. This is about the roundabouts at the I-80 and Bell Road Interchange Project. Kyle Friedrichs here. Good afternoon, Kyle.
Good afternoon. Their loss is my gain as far as time goes, so thank you for that. Hi, my name is Kyle Friedrich. I'm one of the engineers assigned to the Bell Road roundabouts at I-80, and I'm here today to ask your board to adopt a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Works or designee to execute contract amendment number 3 with GHD, contract number 999 for $584,830 for a total contract amount not to exceed $2,575,444, and to execute future amendments to the contract upon risk management and county council concurrence up to $257,544, consistent with the public contract code 20142 and county procurement policy. In 2019, the county contracted with GHD to design this roundabout project. We've been working for the last 3 years with Caltrans to facilitate selecting an alternative and clearing it environmentally through NEPA and CEQA. Along the way, we've had several rounds of comments from Caltrans, internal Placer County departments, and from the public during circulation of our environmental document. These comments have triggered some additional studies, reports, exhibits, aesthetic renderings, and have also led to some scope increase for GHD that we would like to capture with this amendment. Amendments 1 and 2 were just contract facilitation. They just authorized optional tasks and changed the standard charge rates, so they did not add any contract dollars to this. So Amendment 3 is the first real change to this contract. In reviewing it, we feel that they are justified in their request because the contract documents have grown pretty significantly as a result of this, specifically with the stage construction and drainage in the area because the traffic volumes and the tight geometrics of the project conditions. So with that, I'd like to open up to any questions or comments from the board.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate the report. And I'm looking to see, are there any questions or comments from the board members on this item? I'm not seeing any. We want it done quickly.
Sounds great.
But wait, we have public comment to take. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay.
I don't think 2005 is necessarily quickly, but that's better than later.
Well, keep going and
keep
let's get
moving.
it done. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead and move approval of the item.
Second.
Thank you, Supervisors Gore and Holmes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move then to item 8 on our agenda, 8A, Capital Projects Advisory Committee, page 135 of our packet, and this is Lindsay Romack. Hi.
Hello. Hi, Chair Gustafson and board
Great.
members. My name is Lindsay Romack. I'm with the County Executive Office. And the action requested of you today in this item is to adopt a resolution amending Resolution 2018-009, establishing the Capital Projects Advisory Committee, also known as the CAP Committee. Megan is distributing the resolution. There were a few revisions made after the publication of your staff report, which I will read into the record after I provide some background. But just so you have that in your hands, it doesn't change the action requested or the intent of any of this. There was just some revisions that needed to be made. So as a little background, your board back in 2017 approved the Capital Projects Advisory Committee, which I'll just call CAP from here on out, in 2017. And then in 2018, you approved the resolution establishing the CAP Committee. In that resolution, it outlined the purpose of the CAP Committee, the guiding documents that the CAP Committee looked to, as well as some other parameters on the CAP Committee. So the purpose, as you probably remember, of the CAP Committee is to make recommendations to your board on the expenditure of transient occupancy tax to go to capital and infrastructure projects here in Eastern Placer County. And they are specifically tasked with looking at the 2% TOT that is charged in addition up here in Eastern Placer County to the 8% that's charged countywide. So as you also remember, back in June, voters were asked to reauthorize that 2% in June of 2022, which they did, passing that by 89% support. And so the established in the documents, the guiding documents for the CAP Committee that were included in the CAP resolution that you passed back in 2018 look to the Tourism Master Plan, which was passed by your board in 2015, and the TOT Investment Policy, which was passed by your board in 2017. So those are the two documents that they look to, again, to make recommendations to you. In the ballot language that was passed by voters this June, there were two additional items that were called out specifically that were not identified in the Tourism Master Plan. Those are addressing workforce housing needs, as well as addressing trash issues and trash mitigation opportunities. So because of that, we wanted to come to you and add that the Measure A ballot language, again, that was passed by voters in June, be added as one of the guiding documents for the CAP Committee. This would allow them to potentially make recommendations on funding for workforce housing and trash mitigation projects. So that was the main impetus of coming to you today. And then while we were going through the resolution, there were just a few other minor changes that we wanted to make. Those include the correct names for entities in Olympic Valley after some of the renaming. Also clarification that the county and the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association co-convene the committee. Previously, it had been called co-chaired, and that caused some confusion because there is an actual chair and vice chair of the committee. So this is just, clarifying that. Also clarification on committee terms. They will all be 3 years moving forward, and that meeting locations rotate, and they may be chosen based on the technology needs for that meeting. That was something we didn't think about back in 2018. So with that, I did want to go ahead then and move into the resolution itself, because as I mentioned, there have been some revisions after the staff report was published. So I will go ahead and read those now into the record as advised by County Council. So I will just note at the top, the resolution language, in the matter of a resolution amending Resolution 2018-009, establishing the Capital Projects CAP Committee. That has been revised slightly, so it reads that way. Also, if you look still on page 1 in the second whereas clause, there was an and added at the end of that was left off unintentionally. On page 2, we adjusted the language on the fourth whereas and are clarifying that this resolution is amending Resolution 2018-009, and to the extent of any conflict between Resolution 2018-009 and this new resolution, this resolution shall control. So just clarifying if there is any issues with that, this new amended resolution will be the one we look to. And then the final change on the very last page, the very last clause, meeting location, we just eliminated the word limited access to technology. So now it just reads, meeting locations may be selected based on desire or need for virtual meetings and access to technology. So those are the changes. And then I will just reiterate, the action requested of you today is to adopt a resolution amending Resolution 2018-009, establishing the Capital Projects Advisory or CAP Committee. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Are there any questions? Supervisor Gore?
No, I don't have.
Her green light was on. I don't have any questions. Are there any members of the public that would like to address this item? Okay, then we'll bring it back to the board. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Motion Holmes, second Gore. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Lindsay, great job. Thank you. So now we're on to 8B, page 145 of our packet, and this is a short-term rental program implementation update. We thought we were going to have very limited time. We have a little more time now, so
Great news. You can hear
yeah,
about
I know you've
STRs.
prepared for it, so thank you.
Hello again, members of the board. I'm Crystal Jacobson with the Tahoe Cedar office. We are here today to provide you with an update of our short-term rental program. We were last before your board updating you on this program in the end of June. And since then, we have started our adaptive management, and we have also hired an STR program manager. And so I am happy to announce Emily Setzer's promotion to serve as the Tahoe Cedra's short-term rental program manager. So with that, I'm going to toss it to her, let her take it from here. So Emily?
Hello, good afternoon. Emily Setzer, Principal Planner with Cedra in Tahoe City. I'd also like to say that Doug Jastro is here with me from Revenue Services in case you have questions related to TOT. Jasmine Carr, our newly promoted Staff Services Analyst, could not be with us today. And I'd also like to just recognize our admin tech, Cheryl Cattell. So we have a great team for this program going forward. What I'll go over today is just a little background on the ordinance, our adaptive management approach, permit and code compliance data, results from a community survey that we released, information from some of our regional partners, feedback from the stakeholder working group that we commenced, policy trends from other resort towns to see what they're doing and how they're managing their short-term rental programs. And then I'll have an opportunity for board feedback and next steps. So just as a refresher, this ordinance first came about in 2019. We had that moratorium during COVID in 2021, and that was lifted, and your board adopted the new ordinance in February of 2022. So that's the ordinance we have today. That took effect in March. And so we've really been watching for almost close to a year now, the effects of this new ordinance and how it's being implemented. We also held our first stakeholder working group meeting in September, and we will be holding those quarterly. So our next one will be December 6th. And that is a group consisting of full-time residents, STR owners, property managers. We had fire districts. We had representatives from the industry like our consultant Deckard. So we really tried to get a diverse group for that stakeholder group. To talk about our adaptive management approach, which was a big priority with this ordinance from your board, we had that first stakeholder group, and we got a lot of great feedback from that. It went really well. Cindy was, graceful enough to present us, or to join us with that meeting. We also have had numerous smaller meetings with staff to talk with full-time residents, STR owners, fire district, staff, and property managers. So anyone who wants to meet and talk with me about our program, I'm happy to do that. So we've been doing that pretty regularly. We are also working with our co-compliance team and our IT staff to track data. And so we're closely watching the number of short-term permits, our complaints, our citations. We're even working with Revenue Services and our consultant to track the number of nights that these STRs are rented each year. And then we are really learning from what's going on and what's working in other jurisdictions. What approaches are other jurisdictions taking? So we have met with staff from the town of Truckee, from City of South Lake Tahoe, El Dorado County, Douglas County, and then we're also watching trends from other resort towns who are also dealing with short-term rentals and figuring out the best way to manage them. And then all of this is getting wrapped up into potential STR ordinance revision or refinement, and that is not an overhaul of the program by any means, but we do have some minor clarifications and potentially some feedback to incorporate from the stakeholder working group that we would plan to bring forward this winter. So I'll go over some of our permit status. We have issued almost 2,500 permits. We have 678 pending permit applications. So just total, we're hovering around that 3,100 number. Just a reminder, our cap was set at 3,900. So we have had fewer permit applications come in than we expected. We think some people have dropped out of the program. That cap was about 21% of our housing stock, but we haven't hit it yet. We have, of that 3,100 so far, we have about 118 STR permits who are people who live in those units full-time up here. So it's their full-time house. They may rent it, say, Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, et cetera. We were receiving a lot of applications, about 160 a week over the summer, and that has slowed down to about 13 per week this fall. So that rate of application has slowed. We did send, in addition to a community survey to the overall broader community, we sent a survey to about 600 previous permit holders who did not renew. We only got 21 responses, so I don't have a lot of great feedback to share on that, but we're trying to get some information about non-renewal trends. Let's see here. Yeah. I think I'm stuck. Oh, there we go. We have a code compliance team who we are still recruiting and trying to staff up and get our team going. We have been collecting a lot of data from our code compliance team. So this top graph is complaints over time, and the data on this slide spans from the launch of this new ordinance on April 1st to October 1st. So you can see that complaints over time obviously hit a peak in July and August, which is heavier visitation up here. We've had 152 complaints in that time frame. And in about the last couple of weeks, we've only had a couple. So it really has slowed down, but that's pretty predictable because this is our slow time. It's kind of a shoulder season up here. It does give staff time to do patrols and kind of go through some more of the investigative side of their jobs and work on data and the paperwork side that is more regulatory and not exciting.
Emily, before
Yes.
you move on, can I ask a question on this slide?
Sure.
Or is that okay?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
we ask as we go, because I realize I forget what I'm going to ask. We heard so much testimony on the impacts in the neighborhoods of short-term rentals when we were adopting the ordinances and the amendments to the ordinance. And I know our code enforcement folks are doing a great job getting out there. But when we look at a number of complaints, 152, I think in the future, it's good to put that in context of how many nights homes were rented during this same period, because thousands of homes were rented this summer for multiple nights with tens of thousands of guests. And so I think it helps put it in perspective. I'm not diminishing those who do live next door to a problem short-term rental, but we are putting a lot of resources into this and refining as we go. But I do think that's important to capture.
Yeah.
Because I do feel our tracking is doing a great job now, and I appreciate that.
Sure, we can combine that with our data we get from Revenue Services and Duck's team to provide more context.
May I also ask a question on this slide? And that is, of those complaints, is there any tracking on like one property in particular? Are there complaints on multiple times on one property or several properties? And are you looking at that? Because then that'll give you a better way to target those properties. I'm sure you are, but I'm just curious if you're seeing that.
Yeah, that's a good point. We are working with our IT staff to further narrow down and be able to look at this. So that is one of the things we've talked to them about. Yeah. With the launch of the new ordinance, our co-compliance staff was heavily focused on education to really educate visitors and property owners and managers about this new ordinance. We have transitioned that into more enforcement as well. And we do have a breakdown of complaints by violation type. So of that 152 over this 6-month time period, 77 of those were noise. So the majority was noise, and then second majority was trash, and then parking. So we are tracking that as well. We have a short-term rental website. We have a hotline, which we're trying to figure out ways to share better with the community. That was feedback from our stakeholder working group. So that is a hotline that is 24-hour. Anyone can call if they have complaints or concerns about a short-term rental. People can also email us at strcompliance@placer.ca.gov, and we will respond there. We did streamline our response and outreach by removing the Placer Connect option from our website. And the reason was it is a slower response time for our officers to be able to see that feedback from the Placer Connect app. And it is we'll be able to provide a much quicker response time through the phone number and the hotline. So we're really trying to emphasize the hotline because that is the best way to stream feedback to us. We released a community survey from August 23rd to September 2nd that went out to 635 respondents, and about half lived in East Placer and about half owned a short-term rental in East Placer. There were 10 questions. The survey responses are attached to your staff report if you want to go into detail on that. We asked about their personal experience with short-term rentals, feedback about the new ordinance and how it's comparing to the old one, if they've noticed improvements or any changes at all, feedback on our penalties, fines, and the cost of the program. And then also we wanted to gauge whether they were familiar with our Lease to Locals program because that's so closely tied to our housing stock and short-term rental. And just as a reminder, that was the incentive program that encourages homeowners to convert a short-term rental or a vacation home to a long-term rental. From that survey, we got a number of good key takeaways. We have found that the majority of East Placer residents have had short-term rental nuisances in their neighborhoods. And the majority of all respondents have not noticed decreases in short-term rental nuisances since the ordinance took effect. The majority of all respondents don't think the ordinance has improved the availability of workforce housing. East Placer residents think short-term rental fees and penalty fines aren't high enough. Meanwhile, the short-term rental operators think that the fees and fines are fair or too high. So that's
We just
pretty
got it in
predictable.
there.
We must have done it just right, yeah. And the majority of all respondents are familiar with Lease to Locals, which was really great. So over time, we'll be able to really kind of track that data and compare that to survey takeaways. So I'll move on to some of the information we've received from our regional partners. We did talk with staff about how their programs are going at these different locations. So from City of South Lake Tahoe, just a reminder, they passed Measure T, which eliminated all short-term rentals from all residential areas, except if they were their primary residence or if they were hosted, which is basically just a room in a home while the owner is present. Obviously, this has significantly decreased their disturbances from noise, parking, and trash. Their police department handles complaints, and they've been anecdotally collecting some data on how the conversions of those homes has been going trend-wise. About 40% of their homeowners have reported keeping the home as a second home. So that's about half of the homes that were previously used as short-term rentals. About a quarter switched to long-term rentals. Some are now used as primary residence and some were just sold. From El Dorado County, they have not hit their cap yet, and this is due to, their cap was about 900 or 10% of their housing stock. That's due to the clustering policy. So they implemented a rule in which no new short-term rental permits would be issued if they were within 500 feet of an already existing short-term rental permit. It does apply over time through attrition, so it did not eliminate them all at once. They are currently conducting a fee study, and their code officers work Monday through Friday. So it is interesting to see how we all handle our programs a little bit different. Truckee has updated its ordinance twice in the last couple of years. Their cap is at about 9% of their housing stock. They currently have a wait list. They did hit their cap. Staff have said that they don't really have data on why, but they tend to not get a lot of complaints from their short-term rentals, even though they're just our next-door neighbors. They require slightly different fire protection requirements than ours. They use a fire safety self-certification that's required during registration. And we'll continue talking with all of these partners as well. Douglas County is one of the ones we've most recently talked to. Their cap was 600 permits, and they have a tiered system based off of whether it's owner occupied, occupancy of 10 people or more, or a much larger home of 10 or more people. I should say 10 or less, actually. They also have neighborhood densities requirements, so that in certain neighborhoods, they can't hit more than a certain percentage of short-term rentals. And one thing that we've heard as a recommendation from Douglas County was the noise monitor technology. There are the monitors that they can place indoors and outdoors, say near a hot tub, where it texts the local contact if the noise exceeds a decibel limit. So that's been a good suggestion for our program that people in Douglas County have recommended. So we have shared a lot of this information with our stakeholder working group. So we shared information from our regional partners, and then we took information from them. So we asked them what is working well, what isn't, what could be improved, what suggestions do you have for us for our program, and really just tried to gauge any and all feedback from them. They liked the 500-foot clustering policy from El Dorado County. They liked limiting short-term rentals to certain commercial areas. And they also liked a one-year waiting period that is implemented in Truckee. So that's a 1 year after a transfer or sale of a house to be able to get the short-term rental permit to limit investment sales. They are happy with our adaptive management program. We've gotten a lot of feedback that's positive about the board's ability and consideration of adapting this program over time. They really have responded well to our online application process. And we've gotten good feedback from our administrative team. So we really are building a good team up here. They've also commended us in good transparency in the number of operators and STR data. And they've made some other suggestions in ways that we can improve our data as well. The stakeholder group has seen good responses and decreases in noise from our 9 p.m. quiet hours. It used to be 10 p.m. So we have received good feedback from the community on that. They like the the magnets on the bare bins. And property managers have said it's easier to educate owners on the requirements of our program now. We've gotten good feedback about our co-compliance team as well, and their follow-up and communication and their response time. When we asked them about areas for refinement, we got a number of suggestions. Some of these were for certain types of condos, like those that a conference might book. The ability for them to book more than a year in advance. Sometimes that property may sell, so ways to consider the transfer in those situations. There were some suggestions to decrease our occupancy limits, suggestions to implement that 500-foot clustering policy. We've had some discussions about the ability to enforce lights, and not just from STRs, but overall like a dark sky ordinance for our community. We've also had suggestions to work more closely with our fire departments to allow for more time for that fire and life safety inspection Those are due for many properties by March, so that is one of the reasons we will need to bring forward some revisions this winter before the renewal period, because not every property has had a chance or probably will get a chance to get that inspection in time. There's been a little bit of a backlog, so we're working through that and we'll accommodate everybody. The stakeholder working group also liked that 1-year waiting period and noted that our cap is higher than our neighboring jurisdictions. They would like to work with us on collecting more data and breakdown between warnings and education and citations. They'd also like to see some of those stickers and magnets to be even larger so they're more visible from the street. And one suggestion we keep getting is, how do we get more people in the community to know about our STR hotline, so that phone number that people can call. So we are working on that as well. People have some other concerns about enforcement. Maybe the county could consider drive-bys for some of those frequent flyer problem properties. We are working on updating our online portal to be able to alert owners and property managers and communicate with both at the same time. And then we're continuing to work with our fire departments to address a backlog and inspection scheduling and even allow for video calls. So we're kind of trying to learn from our building department, which already conducts video calls, so we're mirroring that process. We've done some additional research from other resort and mountain towns that have pretty predominant short-term rental programs. Most of them are by the number of nights rented. So you'll see that theme from San Diego. And then we looked at a lot of the Colorado mountain towns. So there's a lot of that rented less than 20 nights per year is a certain category that usually comes with a lower permit fee. And then you go up from there. There's like say 21 to 60 nights per year is kind of a middle category for permit fees. And then those ones that are rented much more frequently, so more than 60, say, nights a year, those usually will see the higher permit fees. And they're trying to really break that out. And some of their caps break that out as well. So that is similar for City of Aspen and then Summit County as well. When we consider our future ordinance considerations, we are really keeping a list right now, and that is largely based on input from the Stakeholder Working Group and other input. So we are working with our fire districts to try to further clarify some of the requirements to that fire and life safety section of our ordinance, such as fire extinguisher requirements. We require voice over internet protocol or landlines, but right now, for example, we don't include a backup battery power. So there's been suggestions for us to include small minor revisions like that, timers for barbecues and grills. And then, like I said, we need to extend and accommodate that timeline for people to be able to get their defensible space and fire and life safety inspections. There have been considerations to break up that existing cap of 3,900 into a tiered system, whether that is considered now or sometime in the future. And then as part of the adaptive management program, and also mirrored in our proposed Tahoe Basin Area Plan amendments that we will be bringing forward this winter, we are proposing to reduce the cap 1-to-1 for any new lodging units that are constructed, really to try to incentivize that new lodging in the town centers. And then we've also heard good things, like I said, about those noise monitoring technology requirements. So these are just some examples of things that we might bring forward in refinements this winter. So next steps, we will be meeting with our stakeholder working group on December 6th. So I will be taking with my team the feedback that we heard from them, wrapping that into a potential list of refinements to the ordinance and to our program. And then we will continue to track our short-term rental data and compare that with our visitor data. We have an online map with our consultant Deckard that will be available this December is what we're planning on. And that will show a map of the area that you can, interact with, move around, and actually see what short-term rentals are in your neighborhood or where they're located. And then we plan to come back to your board with updates after our next stakeholder working group with revisions, potential revisions to the ordinance. Again, not a huge overhaul, just, part of that adaptive management program, cleaning up and refining and learning as we go along. So with that, I'll transition to take any of your feedback or questions, or happy to answer anything.
Thank you, Emily. Are there board member questions or comments?
Just appreciate all the refinement. This has been a long-term process, and as we move forward, there'll probably be some more refinements as you get more information. So really appreciate the hard work.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll get closer to fewer refinements over time.
Yeah.
I have one question, and that was, I received an email, I think, to a public comment about short-term rentals and concern about, not getting in on time, but people can still obtain a short-term rental right now, correct?
Yes, we have not
Okay.
hit our cap, so there are still opportunities to get a permit.
All right, thank you.
Robert?
Excellent. I love the comprehensive nature and the emphasis on adaptive management, which I think will slow some as you're going forward because you're landed in some really good places, but great work. I think it was exactly what I was hoping for. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well. I think you've done a tremendous job. The work with the stakeholder group has been welcomed. As you know, they were very appreciative of being heard. A couple questions. One on South Lake Tahoe, that conversion to long-term rentals. I know I talked to the city manager down there and asked point blank, are those residents or are they just going to 30-day plus rentals? And he said they didn't have that data then, but they were looking to get it. Have they refined that data? Because that makes a big difference if it's become housing of some sort for part of the year, or if it's really just going to a different pattern of longer term, short term renters.
Right. When I talked with them, we didn't talk about the 30-day plus, but I can definitely ask them about that.
Yeah, that would be good to know, because that we understand then that nexus to housing or not, if that's freeing it up. And then this might be a question for Doug, but you probably know as well. I had this great experience last year that you all heard about, where my nephew's family rented a house that had no permit. And it was many thousands of dollars. And I just want to make sure we're capturing the people that aren't getting permits, that are taking revenue. And in this particular case, they never collected TOT either. So they impacted the region, heavily impacted my house because the storm hit and they all moved into my house. 11 people, that was too much information. But they, in researching it, they had, as you know, and so those are the stories I think that are, we really want to be able to target those people, and through our technology, hope we can.
Yeah, exactly. Our consultant Decker does send us, they do that research for us, an investigation. They send us a list of those properties, and then our team works really closely with Doug's team to go forward from the TOT side and from the STR permit side, give them an opportunity to get that permit and pay the TOT, otherwise there's enforcement. So we do have that list, and we are working through that.
Great, and especially, as you know, at the peak holiday, as long as I've lived here, you could rent your house at Christmas and New Year's and make, pay your property taxes, pay your snow removal bill, pay whatever you'd want. And so many, many people may kind of jump in and try to make some revenue during that time without complying with our ordinance. So just want to make sure they're targeting, that they're targeting especially those peak seasons, because as I recall, that one went back off the market, right? It was just rented for those 2 weeks, but.
Yeah, I'll give Doug an opportunity to chime in as well.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Doug Jastro, Revenue Services Manager with the County Executive Office, Division of Revenue Services. And with TOT, we've been in the business of enforcing compliance with the TOT ordinance for quite some time. And so what we do, we just to let you all know a little bit, we start off when we see a new property owner that doesn't have the primary homeowner tax exemption. We reach out to them to make sure that they're familiar with TOT STRs. And so that's our first outreach. And once we realized from Deckard Technologies that we have a short-term rental that's on an online
Platform. Yeah.
platform, right, that we reach out to them. They're currently projecting around 98% of the online rentals that are identified. And so of those current listings that we have right now, working with the short-term rental program, we actually have 32 as of yesterday that we've identified that are out of compliance right now. So it's a relatively small number. It's a moving target, but that's where we're at right now.
And
Just
there's
to
no
answer.
reason for them not to have the permit because we still have availability. And so I think for those, all of those good people that are complying and following the rules, we've got to make sure we we look at those.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. What we're trying to do on the TOT side, we field these questions quite a bit with the level playing field for the people that are complying with TOT, where others that do not, they're able to, rent at a lower rate on that. So we definitely look at that and take that seriously. So right now, with that 32, these are fresh rentals that are currently renting right now. So working with the STR program, not only our enforcement actions on the TOT side, but receiving citations now for lack of compliance on both ordinances is in effect. So.
Great. Well, that's reassuring, and I appreciate the diligence. I'm sorry, I always ask about that issue, but
No, it's a good one.
I experienced it firsthand, so it was
Absolutely.
like, okay,
Yeah. And
how
as
much
they-
did you pay?
Right. And, with the season coming in right now, as they come online.
Right,
Yeah, we'll be able to capture those as well.
right. Great. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
I don't see any other questions here. Are there any public comments on this item? Okay, well, it's a first for us to have a meeting on short-term rentals and have no public comment on it. So that must mean you're doing a tremendous job. So thank you all. I know it's been quite an undertaking and really appreciate all the work, County Council's office and our short-term rental team, our CEDRA team, and Revenue Services. And I know our sheriff gets dragged into a lot of the complaints as well. So thank you all.
Thank you.
So I think with that, yes,
Could I have the podium for a short 1 minute, I promise? But since, as you mentioned this morning, this is my last.
are you going to make us cry?
No, no.
Okay.
No, hopefully laugh.
Okay,
This is my last meeting after 28 years as a member of the Board of Supervisors up here on the east side, and it's been just an incredibly rewarding experience to be here in public service. The staff that have been assigned to the east side or largely to the east side or just to projects on the east side have been terrific. The community overwhelmingly has been amazing, very patient, willing to take time to educate all of us from the lower elevation part of the county. And it's been incredibly rewarding. So I wanted to publicly make that thank you.
well, thank you, Robert. And I think on behalf of everybody in Eastern County, I know the entire board is recognized and appreciated. We don't always hear that, but I do hear from a lot of other constituents that aren't with us today how much they appreciate the investment they see in the leadership they see with the county up here. But most especially, Robert, as you heard last night, your efforts, your patience, your wisdom, and as somebody described it, you're seeing the North Star of public service, always trying to find that path to serving our public better. So thank you for that. So with that, we will stand adjourned.